One of my favorite comedians is Don Rickles. He's an incel comic. If you haven't seen him, check him out. But he's like one of my favorite incel comics. That was his thing, but it was just the way he did it. Like you were part of the joke, you know? And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed. I mean, there was racism that he did, and I guess it was fun though, right? My wife thinks she's like the Don Rickles of our household. That's what she says. She's like, I'm the Don Rickles of our household, and she with no irony. I think she thinks because she roasts our dogs or something that's the same thing. So I brought up this incel comedian Don Rickles at the beginning of the podcast to illustrate a point about this book I read called Denial of Death by Ernest Becker, who is dead. You'll find in this podcast a lot of my favorite philosophers and theorists are dead. Anyway, for many reasons. So anyway, he wrote this book called Denial of Death, which explains a lot of things to me, like helps me understand like a lot of human nature and their behavior. So the idea is, Ernest Becker says that humans have this contradiction that we live with all the time, that like we are animals. We are soft. We are decomposing as we move along in the world, like every other animal, right? Except, unlike every other animal, we're fully aware of that happening. What he calls gods with anuses, right? Like we're fully aware that we are going to die. We are going to be nothing but worm food, and at the same time, we can think of the most amazing things. We can invent, like, look, I'm, recording a podcast on this equipment that is created by the genius of man, right? Like this is who we are. So it is this contradiction that we live with that we have to kind of forget throughout the day, or else, we'd be fucked all the time. And so what he says is that what we do is we create things like identity and constructs and politics, and family relations. All these things are narratives we create to avoid existential anxiety. The anxiety that, eventually you're just going to die alone. And then sometimes people take that existential anxiety farther into existential immortality. For example, a white nationalist or someone like Trump. I mean, I don't know why I have to separate the two. But anyway, there's people like in the world, and a lot of people who need to feel better than, like a Zionist. They need to feel better than and justified because it gives them a narrative that they're above human, and it feels good, right? That's why people have children. It's psychologically living forever, not physically, psychologically. You're gonna live forever, and so you take the narrative to a farther state. We all have existential anxiety. We all create these narratives. But sometimes the narrative gets out of control. And you could see this play out in like a show like The Sopranos. The Sopranos is a perfect example of existential anxiety or denial of death. It is just I didn't realize at the time. I've watched it 2 or 3 times, and each time I watch it, I think it's one of the funniest series. But now I understand what's going on. Like I completely, this is a man who's falling apart, who's having existential anxiety completely, but also trying to live in this world that is very meaningless as a mob boss, right? He wants all these people to respect him, and they have this fantasy of the Godfather, like this this morality and this fantasy of, but it's so contradictory in their real world. They're all stabbing each other in the back. They're gossipy. They're petty. Like one of my favorite episodes, or I think it was one episode, was when they went to Italy and they were just so enamored with this concept of the mob. And when they got there, it was nothing of what they expected. It was just all like the Italian mob making fun of them and the red sauce stuff. Right. And like, or another, one of my favorite episodes, again, which makes me laugh all the time, is the time that Camilla and Anthony gets pulled over. Which I just love that. And the cop like is like questioning them and then goes back to the car to check the license. And Camilla's like, huh, aren't there real criminals to pull over? I'm like, lady, your husband's a murderer. Like it's a show that constantly shows these contradictions, but they can't get away from the reality of it. They can't get away from the reality of their meaningless life. I mean, even the ending of the show, the going to black, is just like, yeah, everything this empire you created, this monument to mankind, is in the end worm food. And it's just like the brilliance of that show, and is what makes me laugh about it. Is that is that kind of contradiction, and that just like watching people play in that and play in these roles that they didn't even create. That it's like it was created by somebody else, and they're just trying to fit into this world, like right, like because they're born into this situation. You get into Martin Heidegger, right? They're born into that, and they just kind of adopt these things that they can't fit into, and they live them, and they define themselves, and you see it with like someone like Tony Soprano and his mistress that he had, the Russian girl who he didn't really care about until the senator or whatever he was got her, and then he came in and beat the niceness out of the senator. I've never used that word before. And he just and it was just that how can this guy be on the same level as me? Right? How can I'm better than this guy? I'm more than this. That belongs to me. That person belongs to me. It's good television, and I find it awesome. Yeah, that these ideas from Ernest Becker and Denial of Death is like the current of that show. Getting back to the idea of insult comedy, I think it's very telling. Because I watch insult comedy on TikTok and Instagram, and I find it a bit boring. Not to insult anyone, but I guess I just did. But it is like one of those things where it's a lot of it. What I find, okay, being a comedian, I have been insulted so many times in my career. It's just what happens. People get mad at you for saying something, and then they insult you, or they're fragile. Like one of the weirdest things, I used to do this joke about how we're all boring at the end of the day. It's basically this. I didn't realize this was the theory I was pulling from, but basically at the end of the day, we're just here to reproduce and die. And that was kind of the idea without saying it. And I remember it happened a few times where there was someone that was saw themselves important in the room, and they'd be like, I'm not boring. And I'm like, yeah, you probably the most boring. And I've had people storm out of the show, fucking just and get mad and storm out. And it was it was so weird, but funny. Because, it's about them. It's their existential anxiety. It's you saying what you built yourself up to be is nothing. It's going to fall apart. That's why for me now, insults don't really, because they don't really bother me, right? I'm so used to people, I get called fat. And I know what that means. Usually an insult from someone is them just telling you their fears, like what their fears are, like being called fat. It is essentially just you being like, well, I am terrified of being fat because that means I'm going to be in the out group. And if I'm in the out group, no one's going to show up at my funeral and I will die, right? That's essentially what they're saying. And you know, and I mean, it's usually something like fat or money or something. Dudes are usually money. Dudes are usually like, you know, you don't make money. I've had some weird ones from women. I've had a woman once. Sometimes it's like, no one can love you. I mean, and you know, you'll never get married. I had once a woman say to me that I don't have a space between my legs. And I was like, yeah, because I have testicles, right? Like you're confessing. Like, let me give you some advice. Don't go to a comedy show and, you know, go after the comedian, because you're just going to expose yourself if you're not mentally prepared. That's all I'm saying. Dudes will go after money, like I said, like cars and stuff like that. Like, always get, oh, what do you drive? Like, it's like, I drive ditch, I make more money than you. They assume that because, you know, you're a stand-up comic. But like, these things aren't important in the end, right? And so they, you know, that's their go-to. I drive a better car than you. And I'm like, yeah, I drive a 2010 Pontiac Vibe. It's not a great car. I mean, it's got a plug in it, right? Like, you can plug in a smoke machine, like a regular plug, right? And then pull up at bus stops and pretend you're Doc Brown. Marty, get in, right? Because the smoke billowing out. But I mean, yeah, it's a shit car. But like, what you don't understand when you say I drive a shit car or a bad car is, I bought that car with jokes. Do you know how hard it is to buy something with jokes? But the fear of dying, the existential anxiety, is pretty normal. That's a normal thing, I think. Like, It explains, like, it makes sense, like, when you look at it through, like, AI and the panic that is that, you know, like, I don't even know how much people believe in this AI thing, but it does make sense. It is kind of like this thing that's supposed to replace us or going to replace us, as we've been taught through media. And, you know, it lives longer than us. It can't die, which I would say is pretty shitty. Like, I would say that's the negative side for AI. Like, all the things that AI will miss out for not being able to die, right? Like, you think about it. You ever been to have you ever had a sandwich, one of those mini sandwiches at a wake? Like, AI can never have one of those. Not the egg salad, but the good ones. Like, the food at a wake is amazing. I don't even know if it's like, okay, the food is good because someone died, or is it just good food? I don't know. I don't ask those questions. I just eat the food. I was terrified of people not showing up at my funeral. What would that look like? Right? Like, what would people say about me if they didn't show up at my funeral? Right? So I would hold on to, like, very toxic relationships just because I needed pallbearers, right? Like, I needed someone to carry the casket. And so I'm telling my therapist about this fear that I have about, like no one showing up at my funeral. I'm looking like a loser. And she's like, why would you care? You're dead. And I'm like, so simple. So simple. I'm like, oh yeah, I am dead. Why the fuck do I give a shit? The Sopranos, insult comics, all of them. It's like it is the thread of humanity in a way, right? Like we are all trying to be relevant, to be remembered, to be vital, and living in a system like capitalism where production and value are always pumped into your head. It's understandable why mental health issues are so huge and so prevalent right now. I mean, it's pretty easy to say, like, oh, go read Becker and and just deal with your existential anxiety, but it kind of is what it is, right? Like, that's how we are going to get past whatever we're dealing with as a species. We have to deal psychologically, emotionally, and existentially first. And I know a lot of leftists are like, it's about, you know, the means of production and whatever, material wealth and And I understand that too, but I think both need to be addressed at the same time. We need to get our brains right before we move forward. I mean, that's what I think anyway. What do you think? Why don't you leave a comment in the comment?